Hello. I am doing pretty good, Monkey. I think you saw in one of the Discords, but I have a job interview lined up for this coming Thursday, so that's exciting. Well, I guess the music stopped. I was gonna say, how are the audio levels? How's the audio with my voice? Hello. Before we actually get to the discussion, I have to tell a story about what happened today. Did it already happen, or is it later on? Thursday, like this coming Thursday. It has not happened yet. But this morning, I let one of my roomie's cats into my room. Just cause like sometimes he gets lonely, when roomie has like a later shift and has to sleep in, so, rather than him sitting outside going, meow, 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 I just let him in so that he can have some company, but also not, let roomie sleep. So I'm sitting at my desk, and, like, sometimes he does jump on my lap, but he's usually kind of cautious about it, and he wants to, like, have enough surface area and stuff, so, like, it takes him a little bit to, like, make the decision. So I can kind of see him sitting there and being like, oh, okay, he wants to jump up. He did not do that this morning. This morning he was very gung-ho, and I had my legs crossed, so it didn't even, like, occur to me, because there was barely any surface area. And so he jumps up. I have no idea he's jumping up, so I'm moving my arm, and I basically punched him in the face. But he had managed to put his paw on my leg, which I'm wearing shorts. So he just, like, tried to save himself, and I got this huge scratch on my leg. Luckily it didn't hurt. But I felt so bad, because I punched him in the face. I absolutely punched him in the face. And he was doing that thing where he's like, and like backing up, like, don't touch me, don't come near me. I was like, no, I'm sorry. Oh my god. Had to deal with the bleeding too, but again, luckily it didn't hurt. It just, like, scraped the surface. And he has forgiven me since, but it was really funny. In any case, let us get on to the main attraction here. So I actually have a bunch of notes on my thoughts on the game, because it is a game I hold near and dear to my heart. But that said, you guys can, of course, ask questions as I'm going along. I'm basically gonna do, like, a chapter-by-chapter, like, sort of thing. So if a question comes up, feel free to ask it, and I will respond to it once I finish the small bullet point or whatever that I am on. So, the music is a touch loud compared to your speaking voice. Okay, I will fix that. Just a moment. How is it now? A part of me is wondering if it was also just a loud song. I did adjust it there just ever so slightly. Hello, Gaku, you're just in time. Well, I think I will get started. So I'm going to start with the story. So general remarks first is that although the story is relatively simple, I honestly think that's quite perfect for what the game is setting out to do. Like, it's not trying to be super ultra grand and dark or anything, it's just like, this is a Mario story, right? Not to mention the simplicity, I think, helps lend further to the feeling of a children's book, storybook. Something more complex or dark can still be fun, but I think it can lose some whimsy as a result if it dives too much into that stuff. Not to say stuff aimed at kids can't have some dark moments, but sometimes it's a tough tightrope balance. But I think this story does it very, very well. In addition, the short length of the story I actually think is quite a strength, because it makes it super easy to replay it over and over and over again. Like, I did that as a kid. I would walk down to the movie theater, rent it like right at 11 a.m. when the place opened, play it the whole day, and do my best to beat it before 4:30 on the next day, which is when you had to return them. It was so fun. And the shortness means that you can experience the entire thing in relatively short time, side quests and extras included. I recently did a full tattle run, which means tattling the enemies, locations, and people, plus all the side quests, and it still took like less than 30 hours. So you can get the full experience with not too much time. Now, at this point, as I was reading it before the stream, I was like, I don't even know if I agree with this anymore. It's hard to say. So I wrote down I would personally rate the story after Super and TTYD, but that doesn't mean it's bad by any means. I love it a lot. And I noted here, it's quite close to claiming second from TTYD, the more I revisit it. It just happens that Super and TTYD have more specific tropes that I like to see. But again, it is very close, to the point that I'm honestly debating being like, actually, maybe I do like it more than TTYD, like just a smidgen, if only just because the whole package is just that strong. Whereas I think TTYD has really high highs, but it has a bit lower lows, if that makes any sense, as opposed to 64 has like a very consistent high, right? That said, all things considered, Paper Mario 64 will always be my definitive view of what the Mushroom Kingdom is like. With all that said, on the general stuff, let's go on to the prologue. So the first thing of note is that the game has a really strong start in terms of setup and feel. Getting to Peach's castle right away and seeing it taken from you firsthand leaves a really cool impact, especially falling through the clouds when the title card pops up, and the atmosphere of the stars asking for your help in the forest is like super ultra cool. Goomba Village is a nice cozy place to start the game, though admittedly it does suffer from the prologue's biggest issue, which is the lack of action commands. Later games would fix this, so it's not the hugest deal, since obviously they learned to just skip that part. But the battles wind up very samey without them, plus the lack of badges doesn't help either, but it is the start of the game, so it's forgivable. Paper Mario did Super Mario Galaxy's opening before Super Mario Galaxy. It's true. And the next point of note is, wait, who's this guy again? I'll probably remember him later. Goombario! Goombario is a partner I think gets a lot of unfair flack. I really love using him to tattle enemies to get their health bars, but also to tattle locations and NPCs. He by far has the most available dialogue of all the partners, so by extension it means that he has the most character. Like, I love the other characters, but I know aspects of Goombario that I just can't for the others because of the lack of dialogue that they have. Like the fact that he hates the sewers and the desert and isn't too fond of eating fish. If you've overlooked him before, I highly recommend trying a tattle run, where you just tattle everything, everyone, and everywhere. You can actually learn quite a bit of like lore and personality of the NPCs and like places too. And he's pretty good in combat, being able to have his base attack get up to 6 after the upgrades, and his charge multi-bonk is really fun to use to obliterate bosses. And like I mentioned earlier, because the game is short, a tattle run isn't the worst thing. Right. So the next part of the prologue that is worth mentioning is the Goomba King and his little lackeys. I think they're really good tutorial bosses, obviously really easy because, you know, there's no action commands and they're the first guys you face. But interestingly enough, I think the biggest thing I have to say about the fight isn't in regards to him, but the rare mechanic in his stage, which is interacting with the background. I think hitting the tree so the fruit falls down is such a neat moment, and I really wish battle backgrounds were incorporated more throughout this adventure. I think there's a lot of potential there that just didn't quite get used. And in fact, I tend to forget it is a thing in the game, other than this fight. The next thing I'll mention for the prologue is Toad Town. It is one of, if not my absolute favorite hub town. I love how absolutely lively it feels with so many residents, so many colorful sights, dynamic music. It's just so great. There's so many areas to it, like 6 whole screens. It really does feel like super huge, but also easy to navigate. I love how it's at the center of the Mushroom Kingdom too, where you can get the most of the locations from the paths that branch off from here. It really does make it feel like it's the capital of like a country. And of course, you can't finish talking about the prologue without talking about Shooting Star Summit. Yeah. Y'all, this place is like capital W whimsy. One of my all-time favorite aesthetics and music tracks in all of gaming. I appreciate Merlovely and Merlot being here so much so I can enjoy the ambiance way more frequently. I wish there was like, I don't know, a dungeon or something so that you have like a really good chunk of time here. But alas. Alas. We can't have everything. And all that said, that is the prologue taken care of. So I'll go ahead and move on to Chapter 1. First point of intrigue being Koopa Village. It's overall a really pleasant little town, and I do appreciate the fuzzy attack for giving some like oomph and excitement to the middle part of the chapter, though it is a little random, especially because like I don't think it was the Koopa Bros that sent them or anything. They just kind of were there. The fuzzies, I mean. And like stealing the shells, I'm like, oh, okay. I will say though that the chaotic entrance with the fuzzies attacking really does help Koopa Village feel truly peaceful once they're gone, so that is a plus. The next point of intrigue for the first chapter is our buddy Cooper, who's getting cut off a little bit by the overlay. Cooper is alright. He has a lot of utility on the field, but I honestly forget half the time that he's there unless I need an item or like a switch to reach. It's not helped that he's the first of 2 party members in this chapter, the second of which can kind of outclass him quickly if you're not careful. He also unfortunately doesn't leave too much of an impression personality-wise. He's just kind of the generic, like, I want to go on an adventure type. Which, like, it's fine, and, like, it's fun, but I think it does say something that in a lot of playthroughs I've watched, Cooper tends to be the one that people make the most, like, improv jokes with. Like, they change his personality just because he is pretty generic in that way, you know? So, like, people just, like, switch him up by instinct because there's not too much to work from. I'm sorry, my boy, I love you. So the next area of note is the Koopa Bros Fortress. It's probably one of the weaker dungeons in the game. Not to say it's a bad, but the lack of aesthetic charm that is just like gray the entire time, and the music's alright, and the severe lack of enemy variety. There's Koopa and Paratroopas, which the Paratroopas are just the Koopas with wings, and then the 2 of which are also on Pleasant Path already, and then there's just bombs, which are fun, but that's the only really new one. It's a little disappointing, and I guess you could count the cannons at the top, but like, I don't know, they feel more like a mini boss, which doesn't feel like a regular enemy to me. And more cannons show up later in the story too, so it's like, eh. The puzzles are neat though, and the character moments are usually what make up for it. Such as when you meet... Where are you? Bombette! Get in the center there. Bombette has already been one of my favorites. From her cute pink design to her slightly ditzy hothead personality, getting a bomb first strike off on enemies is super satisfying, and although bomb costs a lot of FP, it's really, really great to see enemies' health bars dwindle so fast, especially when you upgrade her and she can do AoE damage. That said, later down the line, I usually don't use her head much, as I prefer some of the other AoEs, and she can't really deal with flying enemies that well. Aquasun. So, current partner ranking 1 Goombario, 2 Cooper. Yeah. And then, I don't know where I'd put... I think Bombette would be second? Just because jumping is really good in this game. Like, most enemies can be jumped on at some point. Like, even the spiked ones, if you can knock them over, then you could jump on them, right? There's very few where a jump can never get them. So Goombario, along with having all the tattles, can usually work very well as a second in command if I knock everything else. Yeah. Oh, after Bombette, we can talk about the bosses of the chapter, the Koopa Bros. Which, I'm gonna say it, I think they're a tad overhyped. No, don't come and get me. Don't get me wrong, I do love them, but I think they fit just as well as the rest of the Rogues Gallery as baddies. You know, like, rather than them being a standout, it's like, I think that they're pretty on par with a good number of the other bosses, at least to me. Oh, right, yeah, hey, hold on. They have the strongest continual presence, showing up after the Goomba King to show off Bowser, disguising as Toad, showing up throughout the dungeon. I think what kind of flattens their effect to me is that although their boss fight has the fake Bowser and killer music, the fight itself is kind of lackluster. Once you knock them over, it's basically over, and even if you don't knock them over, they don't really have much attack variety. Like, they just do the shell spin, which can do a lot if all of them are standing, but that's it. And I'm just kind of like, I'm just gonna knock you over and take care of you. You know? I think it's also not helped too much that, like, I was trying to think about it, and so Red is the leader, Yellow sets up that block trap, but then I don't remember, like, somebody sees you at the entrance, and then another person gives a guy a key, but I don't remember which one is which. Like, I only remember Red as the leader, and then they're just kind of enemies. Like, they're not like the Ninja Turtles, and then it's like, Michelangelo is, like, the fun one that, like, anyway, actually, right, Mikey? I haven't watched that show in a long time. The yellow one. But, like, I could tell the characters. You know, Donatello, I'm pretty sure purple one, he's the smart one. Raphael is the red one, the more angry one. And then Leonardo is the blue one, that is, like, the leader and a bit more serious, and like, you know, like, they each had distinctions. But for the Koopa Bros, it's like, Red is leader, and the others are there. You know? But yes, otherwise they fill their role very well. But yeah, to me it's just they don't stand out more than the other bosses, and the other, like, they're all good, but I find people like saying like, oh, they're the absolute best, and I'm like, like, they're good, but in any case, now that I've been put to burn at the stake, I'm going to go over to the Peach interludes now, since this is a good spot to talk about them. I love the inclusion of these. Even if they're not the most spectacular in terms of like gameplay, like you're not jumping around or like fighting things or, you know, yada yada. The fact that Peach actually does get to do something and we get chances to develop our villains at the same time is frankly genius. It's also nice to have a break from the main game, and often leads to a pretty much perfect bookend to most chapters where you can start getting hyped for the next one to come. You know, you get a little hint of what's coming. It's an easy time skip to help end off wherever Mario's last scene was. I love it so much. Also, I am a Peach fan, so getting to play as her is always very nice. And that is chapter 1 talked about. So we can now move on to chapter 2. Starting off with Mount Rugged. And I was so glad I was able to find this picture in particular, because it's Mount Rugged and it has the train in it. Because I really love that you take a train to Mount Rugged. Like, the song and the little cutscene, it's so cute. And it really does make it feel connected in a fun way, where it's like, it's far away because you take a train, but it is connected to Toad Town. I've also grown to appreciate Mount Rugged more over the years, especially after I got better at dealing with clefts. I was not good at that as a child, so they were very scary, and it was very nerve-wracking to be on the mountain. It's a little topsy-turvy with its design, but I think it's a really nice area to act as a transition between the feel of Toad Town and the dryness of, you know, the desert. So the next partner we have is Perakeri, which I couldn't find a render of him that didn't have Mario. So I just went with this one, so there he is. Perakeri is great. I really like the male side quest being done through him, so that he can kind of like, you always know he is a mailman. You can never forget that. You know? Despite what many people think of the fact that he lost all of those letters, it's a nice way to develop him, and keep him on your mind. Not to mention, he's great as a party unit. His shell shot in particular, being able to damage nearly anything with such high damage for a low cost, is fantastic. It makes up for Airlift later being, not so great. As far as our ranking will go, it is tough to say, because Goombario having all of that dialogue makes it very hard to beat him in terms of character, and I personally really like him in battle. But Perakeri is really good, especially Shell Shot, because you can pierce defense for a really low cost on any enemy. So in terms of battle, I think Perakeri would win out, but I don't know if that's enough to make him in the first slot for me. He is very enjoyable, though. Perhaps I will think later, I'm not sure though. I do love him a lot. For now, we will talk about Dry Desert. And I got confused there for a second because this was the best sized image I could find of the desert. That was like nice looking, but it's the Oasis part. But it's still in the desert, so it counts. Dry Desert is a step in a good direction for desert levels, but with it being so huge and with a ton of secrets. That said, I do think it could have had a bit more in terms of geography as opposed to just flat sand. Even a few dunes here and there would have helped a lot to make things a bit more interesting. I do like that it evokes that feeling of just an endless, you know, sea of sand by being flat, but I don't know. I think it just, like, as a proxy, it also makes it kind of boring without at least a little bit of something here and there. Oh, but one thing I do recommend is tattling with Goombario a lot here. It's really entertaining because he hates the desert. And some of the areas he's like, am I hallucinating? I don't know anymore. Can we please find some shade? The next area, of course, is Dry Outpost. It's definitely one of my personal favorite desert towns. I mean, like, just look at how colorful it is. I really love But one thing I really like, of course, is Merlee being here, so you come back here and there, and it also has some very interesting lore with, like, the thieves and the ruins and all that. Like, it really does feel lived in. The Mustafa twist is a very fun one, if on the simpler side, and I think the biggest plus is that you can walk on the rooftops, so it's a nice way to give it some, like, verticality and make it feel a bit bigger, even though it still just has 2 screens to it. Yeah, Paper Mario! The world design of the place feels really unique, but it still feels exactly. That's one of my biggest things with the designs in this game, is, they're all very unique, but they still feel very Mario. Which, like, it's actually impressive, because I pointed out in the Origami King stream that Toad Town there didn't quite feel like Toad Town, except for, like, one house that was shaped like a mushroom. But it's so interesting to me here that it still has, like, a Mario feel to the architecture, even though there's not, like, exactly, like, mushrooms or anything plastered everywhere, if that makes sense. Like, it still has a Mario feel without having to, like, paste Mario stuff all over it, just by the colors and, like, the shape of the buildings alone. I love it a lot. Yeah, the shop here is really cool too, how the prices are different because it's desert, so certain things are more expensive. I really love little world building like that. Oh, Dry Ruins, I love you. Well, in this screenshot. So in terms of the dungeons for the chapter, the first thing I have to mention is the scene where it rises out of the sand. I had to get this picture. It took me a little while, but I had to use this one. Even to this day, I find that scene so captivating, and it really does give the ruins a feel of, like, it's very grand and, like, mysterious. That said, the ruins themselves are a touch easy on the puzzles, though I do appreciate the different approaches they took for things like coffins, sand rooms, mummified chain chomps. I think the aesthetic of the dark glowing ruins is just so good that seeing them in the daylight instead was a tad disappointing. The ruins look best with, like, the kind of glowy, darker feel, in my opinion. So that does work out, though, as you get deeper, and it does get a little darker. So I guess maybe that, like, balances it out, but it's very brown for me. Which makes sense, you know. And last but not least, Mr. Tootin' Koopa, the boss of the chapter. Tootin' Koopa is a fun villain, what with his gimmick of trying to scare you as you go through the ruins, and the fact that his chain chomp is what ultimately chases him off. I also really love when you get into the hammer room, that he's like, oh wait, no, go in there. But then he's like, oh wait, ooh. He still has a bit of mystery as to who exactly he is, too, which is really fun. Like, is he a Magic Koopa dressed as a pharaoh? All that said, he doesn't leave much of an impact as the other bosses. But he's definitely fun. And that is chapter 2 done. So I will open up the chapter 3 files. Which, honestly, one of my favorite chapters. Because I am a sucker for Halloween and spooky aesthetics, so Forever Forest is a great start of chapter 3 for me. I really enjoy that you use the spot the difference to navigate, especially as it gets you to engage with your surroundings a bit more than usual. The enemies can be annoying to dodge if you don't know how to maneuver around them, or if you don't have Zap Tap, but I think that's a minor inconvenience overall. To me, the biggest annoyance is the fact that Bulbulb is in here and super easy to miss or forget about. I always do my best to be like, check the middles, because he is on the, like, desired plot path, so if you're checking the middles, you will find him. But if you forget to, it's like, ah. Continuing this spooky theme is Boo's Mansion. It hits all the right Haunted Mansion notes, and I just love it so much. Not only does it have a great atmosphere, I'm a person who tends to lean more towards puzzles than battle, although I do love the battles in this game. So having an area that's strictly puzzle focused with no danger is fantastic. Also, the boos look so adorable in this game. Like their big fang smiles, it's just so cute. I love that it also basically becomes another town after you beat it. Hello, Celebi-san! I don't think I can separate this chapter mentally from the fact that as a kid, the forest and the gulch both drive me insane. I mean, that's fair. I think after playing it so many times, the memories of being able to do it versus not have overridden any sort of, like, stuff like that, if that makes any sense. So I've definitely had games where, like, I struggle with stuff, but I've played them more in the future, and then I'm like, it's not too bad. So maybe you gotta play more, and then you tell me about it more. I will always hear about Paper Mario playthroughs. Speaking of which, on to one of the best partners, Bo. Honestly, although I love Goombario, Bo is probably the best partner in the game. At least objectively from a story standpoint. It's great to see her smack enemies around and protect you from attacks, but I think that her biggest strength is the fact that she has a continuous and active role throughout Chapter 3. She's the one who sets up the mansion puzzle. She basically strong arms you into helping with the boos. She has dialogue with Tubba Bubba shows up to take care of Stanley in the Gusty Gulch, as well as the first time if you get caught in the castle. Honestly, Goombario is probably the only partner to outdo her in available dialogue. And note, I said available dialogue. But even then, Goombario's non-catalog dialogue is probably either less or equal to Bo's, just because like he shows up in the prologue, right? So like Bo has a presence and a personality throughout the entire chapter, as opposed to like Cooper gets a few scenes, like he's like, oh no, this guy stole my shell, can you go get it back? And then he's like, I've come to take my shell back, and then you get him in the party and he doesn't talk. Yeah, Aqua-san puts it well, where it helps that she has a strong personality and actively has a goal she's pursuing. And like in the final scene of the chapter, she's the one that gives you the Star Spirit. And you know, seeing her smack people in battle like I said is just great. Like that's just funny. And then later with her fan, like she's got super good utility and super good character, funny, cute design. Just really, really great. I think I would personally put her at spot number 1, and then 2. I'm still stuck. Like, it sounds so weird, but I have such a soft spot for Goombario. It's between him or Parakarry for number 2, and then I think Bombette, and then Cooper. Bo's only weakness is that if an enemy has defense, she can't really do much to it. But that to me is just a logical weakness that each partner should have some sort of weakness. Anywho, that was a big section about Bo, as it should be. So moving on to Gusty Gulch. Something I really appreciate about Gusty Gulch is that it manages to be another desert-like area, but it stands apart from Dry Desert by taking more of a western feel, well, with the abandoned town of booze and all. That's the main reason I remember Gusty Gulch, aside from the music, is the fantastic chase down the great set piece to the windmill. Oh. Sorry, the chat thing just caught something and it was funny. Yeah, as Rhea says, Lady Bo has such a fun moveset. Every time I use her slap or fan move, I always said, I'm gonna slap you silly. It helps too that she's got like the Ojo personality, which is really fun. I don't know where they started out. I'm not sure. The next area in Chapter 3 is, of course, Tubba Blubba's castle. It's an interesting location, though admittedly a tiny bit bland. Like, you can even tell from this screen cap right here. The angle of this is the home of a giant is quite neat, but as you can see from the screen cap, it leaves a lot of, like, empty space. And I think what kind of makes it, like, is that it's mostly just kind of a dusty regular home. You know? Like, there's not, like, specific types of furniture or anything like that. I would have liked to seen a bit more done with the location to maybe give a bit more subtle character to Tubba by seeing what his house is like. All I can get is that he's got very plain taste in furniture and doesn't clean much. Which I suppose is something, but eh. It takes a long while to walk around. The most annoying part of Tubba Blubba's Manor are the little beautiful grabbers. I always just spin past them. Lastly, we'll talk about the boss of the chapter, which for the most part is Tubba Blubba's heart. It's a really interesting concept for how Tubba Blubba is invincible, but his attacks aren't very varied, and when he reunites with Tubba Blubba, it's like a joke fight. What really saves Tubba Blubba as a threat is when he is invincible and his presence precedes the chapter with Peach's section, and then remains constant from Bo mentioning him, to Stanley's demise, to his castle, and then the chase. I would say he either ties or beats the Koopa Bros in terms of presence as the main boss, just because, like, he's mentioned before the chapter, the Boos specifically call you as, like, to help with him. You get to personally see him eat somebody, and then he chases you, which is like, oh my god! But yes, Chapter 3 is a very, very good chapter for me. I really like it quite a bit. Which leads us to Chapter 4. You would not believe how hard it was to, like, try and find a good picture of a Shy Guy in Toad Town, because I wanted to talk about the Shy Guys being in Toad Town, but I could only find pictures of the toy box, and even then, those pictures were not great quality. This is the best I could do. Oh no, it's Mario. But anywho, right from the moment you leave Forever Forest, you can feel the effects of Shy Guys in the town. I know a lot of people find the Toad Town portions to be like, not so great, or like, feels backtracky is what it's described as, and I'm like, what? It's the Hub Town, you're just walking, I don't get it. But personally, I love how the game managed to essentially incorporate the Hub Town into a chapter. Like, it makes the Hub Town part of the quote-unquote dungeon, which I think brings it to life even more personally. Like, I don't know. That's just me. And, like, I get where people are coming from, but I don't know. I just find that so neat that it overrides any sort of, like, sort of feeling. But yes, to each their own. Next up is the toy box, which this was one of the best pictures I could get. It was in a battle. And I was just like, okay. It's a really colorful and lively location. I personally love it quite a lot, but if I did have to hark on one thing, it could be that it could use a bit more diversity in how the environments look. Stuff like the slot machine and the darker rooms help quite a bit, but I think there could have been just a tad more landmarks to help things stand out a bit more. Just like maybe one or two. Because like it's got the Ferris wheel, it's got, like I mentioned, the slot machine, the different like stations and stuff, but I do think that the background gets a little bit much when there's not more to vary it up. I still do like it quite a bit though, very unique location. Next is Watt. Watt is a partner whose main appeal is battle due to her piercing defense with her regular attack. She can boost your attack and paralyze enemies, but most people, myself included, usually use her standard attack, at least from what I've seen. That said, her inclusion really does feel like a last-minute addition. Her ability on the field is hardly used, and her story doesn't really connect to where she's found, or, like, the story. I do like her, but I just wish she would have been incorporated a little bit better. In terms of ranking... Character does a lot for me in terms of ranking stuff. I think I'd have to put her under, like, in the third slot, because it's Bo, Goombario, and Parakarry for a tie, and then I think it was Bombette, Cooper. Am I forgetting somebody? No. Yeah, I think I'd put her above Bombette, just because that piercing defense for no FP is really, really good, and the fact she can boost your attack. Though I don't know, because Bombette does have, like, she makes sense in the narrative. She has a nice personality, and like her ability is great and used on the field. Yeah, actually, I think I'll put Watt under Bombette in terms of the ranking. Just because, like, I do really like Watt, but man, does it ever feel obvious that she, like, came in at the last minute. Of course, the boss of the chapter, General Guy. General Guy is a really fun boss with his arena and his gimmicks of multiple infantry coming out to fight you. There's a lot of humor and genuine challenge in the fight, which gives it a few extra points. I think the main thing that's a weakness for General Guy is that Shy Guys are extremely prevalent in the chapter, but General Guy himself only shows up at the very end. He has a great presence and personality for the battle, but he only shows up there, so his impact is a little bit lessened. I think it might have helped if maybe some of the Shy Guys mentioned him, but up until then, he just kind of shows up there. And then once it gets to his part of the fight, he only throws bombs or uses electricity at you, so not too much variation for him alone. And that is it for chapter 4. Which leads us to chapter 5. I can count. He feels weirdly that he's military when all the other guys under him are much more chaotic. Like, they don't feel like they're being commanded. It's true. I always... Like, that is a fair point. Though to me, it always felt like he was playing General, if that makes any sense. Like, because it's a toy box, they come off as very childish. So it felt like Bowser gave power to a kid that was like, we are going to be a general. Yeah, like Aquasun says, I feel like General Guy is a kid playing General. Which also does help the fact that, like, none of his people, like, fully listen. Like, if they get scared, they run away, and he's like, you cowards! Just like kids actually would. And just like kids actually would, he doesn't do anything until everybody is taken care of, and he's like, okay, bye! I'll do it then. But anyway, on to Yoshi's Island. Yoshi, or not Yoshi's Island, Yoshi's Village, sorry. Yoshi's Village is such a delight. Just tropical resort vibes all the way. The music is fantastic and the Yoshis are so adorable. It's not huge, but it doesn't need to be, and smaller size makes sense for a village that's like just locals on a deserted island. It also does help that I always considered the like beach area as part of their... Like, it doesn't have the music and stuff, but I always considered it as, like, they go for a walk on the beach. The next area of the jungle is the jungle itself. I am a little bit torn on J Jungle, as it leaves a little bit to be desired. Just a little bit. It works very well as a dangerous jungle location, but I would have liked to see a bit more uniqueness in the look of the place. Like, it works, definitely, but, and I do like that they differentiated the different layers of the jungle. Like, the deeper layer is, like, a darker green, there's not as much blues, And then the Raphael section is great. But I don't know. I feel like maybe some more like tropically fruits or something. Like just a bit more color that isn't green would have helped me a lot. Because otherwise, again, it's just like, it's jungle. It's well done jungle, but it's like just jungle. Do you fight the whale mini-boss before this? No, or unless you're talking, sorry, I thought you meant fighting the whale, and I'm like, you don't actually fight the whale. But yeah, you do fight Fuzzipede. I didn't include him because, frankly, I kind of forget about him half the time. He's just kind of there. If anything, he only feels included to make plot useful in a battle. Or not needed in a battle, is what I meant. She's always useful. Speaking of partners, we have Sushi. For me, I think I enjoy Sushi more than most people, but admittedly she's not exactly my favorite either. She's more useful than I think people give her credit for, but I think the biggest drawback she has is ironically not really her fault. Being surrounded by Yoshis is the only Cheep, and then getting a Cheep as a partner is like, oh, like I wanted a Yoshi. She also got like a motherly like naggy personality, which is fun, but like I think a lot of people played as kids and they're like, I don't want a naggy mother figure. What do you do? She is really good for the next dungeon area though, so MVP in this chapter at least. And if you can get Tidal Wave to work really well, she can work quite well. And the defense block is pretty versatile. As for a ranking... Oh, hello! We're getting a raid from Relaria store. Thank you for the raid. I'm trying to rank Sushi among my partners here. I think... Darn, would I put her above Bombette? I might. I feel like I use Sushi more than I use Bombette by the time that I get her. Just because she's so useful with the fire enemies, and then... like, I really like the defense boost. Oh my gosh, another raid! Hello! Thank you for raiding. Oui, Bulasu. Sushi brings in the raids. Title raid. Oh yeah, that's what I was mentioning. Bombette's AoEs are like fun, but like if you can get Tidal Wave working, that's a really good AoE. Yeah, I think that's the ranking. I think. Bombette and Sushi are pretty close though. Yeah, her action commands. I think I like the flick a bit better. Also, I do like getting defense when I can, so. This has a bit more utility than Bombette, I think. Moving forward, we're going to Mount Lava, which you can see has much lava. As a chapter dungeon, Mount Lava personally leaves a lot to be desired for me. It's an interesting area, and I think it does look quite good for a volcano. But I think that Colorado is really what makes the area interesting and engaging for me. Otherwise, this is kind of a volcano, which like is interesting. But with how many areas does it have? It has like maybe 15 different like screens, and I'm just kind of like, yeah, it's a volcano. It's a pretty volcano. It's kind of a volcano. There's not too many landmark type things, but the escape at the end is really cool. But otherwise, like I mentioned, most of my enjoyment is based on Colorado rather than the volcano itself. It's so lava-y. It's like a water level, but with lava. I actually kind of wish they would have maybe done a bit more with something like that. Like they do a bit with like stopping the flow. But I think it would have been neat to do like a lava river type of thing, maybe? I don't know, but I also don't know what kind of like landmark you might put in there, but Yeah. That was just how I felt about it. It is one of the best volcanoes I've seen, though. Yeah, it is neat that Colorado comes back. Oh, zoomed in too much. And now we talk about the boss of the chapter. Lava Piranha. Lava Piranha for me is one of the weaker bosses in terms of like impact and the fight. There's a bit of an attempt to give it presence by having the minions pop up throughout the volcano, and I did enjoy that, but I feel like it gives more character to the boss, like the scout, rather than the boss, if that makes any sense. The look of the boss is also just like, I am a piranha plant and I am big. And it does look neat, but I'm like, I really would have loved to have seen, you know, just a tiny bit more with like the color or something. Specifically the main head. It's just too close to a regular piranha for me. Like maybe yellow spots or like a magma pattern or something. And like just that would have been enough. But as is, I'm just kind of like, it's a big piranha plant. And then like the caveman speak doesn't help. It makes it feel like it just barely has intelligence enough to talk. Heck, I think the scouts talk more professionally than it does, which is a little weird. I even went back and checked in LP, and Gourmet Guy says that there's also a nasty lava piranha guarding the spirit, which comes across as there's multiple lava piranhas out there, and this is just one of them, as opposed to, like, the lava piranha, or lava piranha is the guy guarding, you know, like, it doesn't sound like a name, it sounds like, oh, this is just an enemy that can talk. The gimmick where it has 2 phases and fakes you out with the star points is really fun. But then unfortunately the battle becomes a cakewalk, because if you use any water or ice, it just kind of completely takes away any threat. And like you could say like, oh, but you could just not use water or ice and beat it that way. And I'm like, that's true, but I also just did that. Like I just beat it without using water or ice. Like in the first phase, I'm like, I don't want to do that twice in a row. And like, I just got Sushi, who has all this water stuff. I want to use the water stuff. I've been saving up my snowman dolls. Why wouldn't I? So yeah, it just, multiple combined factors just kind of make it like, Like, it's still fun, don't get me wrong, but it's weaker than the others, to me at least. Which leads us to chapter 6. Flower Fields. I debated getting a picture of like the flower garden or something, but I decided against it. Now, I have the unpopular opinion of actually liking flower fields. Well, some of the bulbs, like Forever Forest, can be tough to find. I do like that there's hints of this place scattered all throughout the world before we get there. So it's kind of like in the back of your mind. And the entrance being in front of our faces the whole time in Toad Town is just so neat. Like this magical door that pops up when you plant flowers. Oh my god, I love that so much. I know many people have issues with backtracking, quote unquote, in the chapter due to the layout, but I personally like the change in the level of design. It gives it a distinct feel as opposed to just kind of like the hallways and stuff. And I'm also a super big fan of the flower theme and the idea of a cloud enemy filling up the sky as an enemy to the flowers, and then you raise the sun later. It legit sounds like a classic fairy tale type of deal, along with the door, like, appearing after you plant flowers. Like, the entire thing, like, just this chapter alone could be a little book. You know what I mean? Like, I just love the theming so much. Yay, Rhea! Somebody else that likes it. Yeah, well, no, most people find it, like, the unpopular, or that it is unpopular because of the layout. A lot of people don't like that, oh, you have to go down a hallway and then come back to the main part in the middle, or if you go into one and you didn't remember it was the wrong one, then you have to go back to the middle, and you know, etc. And I don't know, to me, I'm just like, it's not, I don't know, it's just not a big deal. Like, I don't know if like I just remember the layout better, or I just don't mind, because honestly at most there's like, what, 4 screens away from the middle, and then you can just come back and you get a partner that makes you faster. I don't know, just like dodge the people. I guess because if people don't get the berries right away, then they have to go get those, and I don't know, just to me it just feels like that's exploration, if that makes any sense. Like, it's one of the later chapters in the game. Of course you have to explore and look around and figure stuff out. I don't know. I like it. That's the partner you get is lackluster, and he lives up to his name and that he is kind of lackluster. It is really neat that you get to fight one of your partners before they join you, but I think that's one of the few novelties he has, along with being able to move at a faster pace on the field. But even that, you can kind of just get the fast spin and then just jump and stuff, so his abilities in battle are pretty much outclassed by everybody else, and showing up so late in the game doesn't do him any favors, since if you hit a super block or whatever, he's gonna have no levels and everybody else is probably gonna have at least one, and it's like, okay. Why would I boost him when I could boost somebody else to ultra rank? But he still functions, but I barely use him unless there are like spikes I have to get over. I would rank him last. I'm sorry, lackluster. Important question. Do you call him Jonathan, lackluster, or Spike? I use lackluster. I don't think this is the first chapter. Oh, you haven't played this chapter, Adept? Huh. What? Oh, because you stopped before here, I guess. I was gonna be like, haven't you played the 7th? How'd you do that? The cool name, Jonathan. But yes, that's my lackluster hot take. Moving on to Huff and Puff, the boss. Huff and Puff is definitely one of the hardest battles in the game, but with his self-healing and abundance of little minions, child me always had a rough time with taking him down. While he doesn't show up personally throughout the chapter, all of the mooks keep mentioning him over and over again, as well as the affected flowers. So it really does work well to give him a nice presence, even though he doesn't show up. Not to mention the fact that like you can see clouds everywhere, so it's like, okay, he's a cloud. There's a cloud. You're thinking about him. Yeah, for some reason my Paper Mario playthrough is better out near the end. Do you try playing it like all at once? Is that why, maybe? Or maybe you're also of the mind that Flower Fields is not the fun part. Sabu Sabu. Or maybe you can't find the